Aloha, this is Asa from the Aloha Nerds, and here to just do a little bit more of a recap of the previous 2 sessions of Dungeon of the Mad Mage. This will include a session from the 7th of April and one from the 21st of April. Skipped a session in between there because I had a little bit of a head cold, and it wasn't going to work. And just FYI, these colorized maps are from a Reddit user on the Dungeon of the Mad Mage Sub-Reddit. I believe it's Delita87. So, yeah, back over here in the Goblin Bazaar, we had foreshadowed a possible fight or something was going on with possible invisible enemies at the very tail end of the previous session, and that's where we jumped in. So the group had backed away a little bit to like Area 1A, and we're kind of deciding what to do. Miles, the Inquisitive Rogue, had figured out that there were hidden invisible people in Room 1D in the big Goblin Bazaar. So they decided to act along, or play along a little bit, walk into the bazaar, quote-unquote shop around a little bit, as well as walk into Yek's room. Yek was being nervous as well. Through a couple perception checks, they were able to deduce that there was probably a hidden Duergar standing behind Yek and behind his throne, and that's pretty much when combat started. Between the Duergar spellcaster, the Keeper of the Flame, that's who was behind Yek. Yeah, even with disadvantage, which was counteracted by the Barbarian recklessly attacking, he died in one turn of the Barbarian. There were a couple other hidden Duergar in this room, but mostly the Duergar were out on watch out here. They did notice a couple Duergar that had a Xanathar's Guild symbol, which in my game has been the extra nod to let people know that there's an intellect devour in that particular creature. It's usually a brand of the Xanathar symbol somewhere on the creature's forehead. So they knew to target them, to not let any intellect devourers go, or to target the head especially, so that it wouldn't be able to climb out and attack one of their friends. The battle was intense. I think it went maybe 5 or 6 rounds altogether, but in the end they did well. They had a couple runaways. A spy ran south and was able to get away and run off to room 20, which is where the other Xanathars, where another contingent of Duergar had set up in where the Xanathar's Guild had previously been. They did capture one spy and interrogated them. Coupled with the fact that they had a runaway that went that direction, they decided to just run down the hallway and engage the Duergar in the Xanathar's Guild. That fight was only a minute and a half after that fight, so they had no time to rest. It was just one fight after another. With more Duergar, all of them, since they were alerted to the fact that there were Duergar here, or that there were people killing the other Duergar, they had an intellect devourer, they were able to just know what was going on. All of them were enlarged in preparation of the group as they ran down the hallway. There was no surprise round. Everybody knew what was going on, and it was just more of a surprise to the players that all of these Duergar were basically filling all of these 10-foot squares, and it actually splashed over. I think the Mind Master, he was shrunk, and because the Mind Master they can reduce instead of enlarge. So he was all the way back here, whereas this whole room was filled up with enlarged Duergar, and that led to a fun little fight. Again, that was maybe 4 to 5 rounds of combat. Nothing too crazy, but crazy enough. These Duergar I took from the ranks of the Xanathar's outpost in Skull Island from the Skullport maps. So due to the fact that all these groups of Duergar have come against the party already and been defeated, that so those combatants in Skull Island have been reduced. So if and when they ever do go there, there won't be nearly as many combatants there to balance out for the fact that I added all these extra enemies to this map. Once they defeated the Duragar here, they started exploring around a little bit more into room 21, the long hallway with the ballista. Engaged the ballista, killed the ballista. A couple of them tried to capture a ballista and keep it as a pet. It didn't work out, unfortunately. They were both had to be killed. Made their way to room 22 with the pillar, with the spigots. They tried all the spigots until eventually they spawned the green slime. They were careful not to drink the green slime, thankfully, but that did happen. They went through the big vat room in 22C, and just due to the nature of starting at the front barrel and working their way to the back, they got to the very last barrel, which then had the Beholder zombie pop up and engage them in another combat. Then they went down the sloped hallway. They immediately saw the pit traps for what they were. Found the secret doors, again, same thing. Investigated room 22E first. Saw all the barrels of ale. And then as half the group was up here, Miles, the rogue, went down into 22F and started investigating the room with some intact barrels and some broken barrels, and then got ambushed by the mimics. And that's where we called the session at that point, just because it was a nice breaking point, and I think we were into like hour 4 or 5 of the session, and it was time to stop. And then we started the next session on the 21st with in media res with an initiative roll starting the session. There was a mistake that I made in that Carl's character, Miles the rogue, is wielding a sword of warning, so he shouldn't have been able to be surprised. So I rolled a surprise round even though I didn't need to, or even though I shouldn't have, but we resolved it, and I'll just try and avoid it in the future. But the mimic fight went down quick enough. I think it went maybe 3 to 4 rounds, nothing that crazy. That was their 5th fight of the day, so of the adventuring day, so the party decided to go back up to the surface. They grabbed 5 of the barrels and carried them up. Got back to their manor house. It involves going up to the first floor and then going to the northwest corner of the first floor, going to one of the offshoot tunnels from that first floor, traveling another 2.5 miles under Waterdeep, going through a dwarven tomb which has been emptied before the characters even arrived, and their manor house is above that tomb. Up in the North Ward of Waterdeep, which is a manor house that they bought and they own legally. And yeah, they're working on developing the manor house pretty heavily. They've got a wizard tower under construction. They've got a bar under construction. That's all they had gotten to at this point in the adventure. But they're going to be using the barrels of ale to help with the establishment with the bar. So they got a long rest in. I think they took 2 days up above for one reason or another. It doesn't really matter, but they came back down, and that's when they hit the cold room. Was a simple room, but it was enough to where they did get blasted by the cold trap because the wizard used Identify as a ritual inside the room. Once the spell went off after the ritual got cast, the cold blast hit, and I think 3 out of the 5 characters got hit by that. They then went to 19A, saw the broken spider under one of the candelabras, or the chandelier. Also, they went up to 19C and started burning away the webbing, which attracted the spiders from 19D. They came down the hallway and they could hear the spiders coming, so they were ready, and that was a quick little fight. They continued to burn the spider webs all along this hallway, and they used enough fire to burn these webs up that I didn't even have them get ambushed by the swarm of baby spiders. It was a superfluous fight. They were able to explore around, and they found what loot was in these rooms. They got down to 19B. They found the dead spider, and they also found in the armoire to the south, they found the dead halfling inside there. and got the loot off of that one as well. Alright, at that point they came back and hallway 23A and 23B. They got to room 24 and explored around that. I think there was some loot with the skeleton, but this is where I put in some additional add-on content. This is where I put in a secret entrance into the Lost Tomb of Kahim, which is a little bit of add-on random encounter content from Out of the Abyss. In Out of the Abyss, the lore had it as a tomb of a half-elf sorcerer. I retooled it to be a dwarf, so that it would match up to the legend of the Sentinel Shields that they had been told about from the lady they bought their manor house from. And that also allowed me to give a really badass shield to one of the characters. So they got through that tomb with a specter, four specters and a white. Easy enough, but it wasn't meant to be a big, huge diversion. It was just enough to justify some hidden content and some cool loot for them to find. They came back up and proceeded down to area 25A, met up with Halistron. Didn't understand what he was saying because Halistron only speaks Modron, which I represent as just me splurting out a bunch of zeros and ones in random succession to, basically Halistron speaks binary. That's what Modrons speak. They used comprehend languages and to understand what he was actually saying, and through some good roleplay between the group and Halistron, they were able to deduce what exactly the Elven columns do. They got the command words, and that's when they started to investigate the rooms with the statues, all the statue rooms. Once they got to 25M with the with the Mind Flayer, they just destroyed the Mind Flayer. They didn't even try and revive it. They didn't try and revive anything else. However, at the end of the hallway, they found the secret room of 25H where there is a statue of Halaster. There was some debate, but they decided, maybe it's a test. They took Halaster's statue back to the Elven columns, and they used the magic activation phrase elf magic, and the Halaster statue basically called them idiots. So in retribution, they put the statue in one of the corners, facing the corner in timeout basically, rather than putting him back where he was found. They then proceeded to clear the rest of the dungeon pretty quickly and easily. Their usual approach of going up to a door and listening allowed them to hear the owlbears ahead of time. They dispatched the owlbears in I think maybe 3 turns. It wasn't all that bad. They found the Pot of Awakening hidden in one of these broken sarcophagi. They were easily able to figure out that the sarcophagus in 26B is fake. However, the rogue didn't tell the paladin that, so the paladin tried a little extra heavy to finally figure out that it was just a big block of stone. In 26C, it was just investigating a little bit until they figured out that the urns and pots were just knocked over by owlbears in the past. They got to the hallway that slopes upwards towards 26D, easily found the pressure plate due to the rogue, disarmed it, and proceeded forward. And then finally 26E, they got there, explored thoroughly. They found the spell book that was badly burned, and they found the Dust of Disappearance hidden in one of the urns filled with dust. And that's where they finished. They then decided to go back up. They collected another 7 barrels of Malarican ale, and yeah, they went back to their manor house, proceeded to invest some more money. They've now started up the construction process with a 2,000 gold amount for a keep, and they have the keep in the underground tomb of the Orc Slayer dwarf, which is right below their manor house. So basically they're going to build a stronghold to protect their house and the city of Waterdeep from any incursion coming up from below through the dungeon. Also, they'll be able to use some of the soldiers that they get from completing the keep to build basic patrols and essentially guard duty on the first level or the first couple levels, so they don't have to do random encounter checks as they explore, at least those 2 levels. Let's see what progress they've made. This is my tracker page that allows me to, this portion up here is how I track the time of day. The dark gray is long rest time. I give them 2 hours of prep in the morning and 2 hours of wind down in the evening that they really shouldn't try and adventure during, but push comes to shove they could. The white is where they're actually adventuring. So from 8 to 8 really is what it comes down to. So they got 12 hours during the very middle of the day that they adventure. And based on how long it takes them to clear a room, spell casting time, rituals, all of that nature, I add additional time, and that way I can keep track of where they are during a current adventuring day. Since they're back at home, I've advanced the calendar. It's the 7th of Tarsak, which is, I believe, April in the Forgotten Realms of the year DR 1592. Progress on their projects, the tower, which is a wizard's tower, they put all of their gold, or they've completed the 4,000 gold bill on that, so that's completely paid off. But they've still got 23 days left of build time before that's complete. The establishment, which is a bar, they've got that all paid off. That just got paid off in the most recent session. That was used with a little bit of extra gold, as well as I allowed the collection of barrels of ale to go towards that completion. As well as they've got 30 days left on the actual construction of the establishment. These costs and time to complete are all based on strongholds and followers from Matt Colville or MCDM Productions. These are discounted slightly from straight build cost, simply because they own a manor house with buildings that they can use towards this process. There was already a wizard's tower there. It's just a matter of them completing the build. So yeah, the 30 days left on the establishment. Our paladin Kuros, the Dragonborn, has expressed interest in multi-classing into being a fighter, so I required that he needed to put at least 2 weeks into training with a fighter, a master fighter, and he's gotten 1 week completed. He's got another week to go. This is progress on the keep itself. That's the stronghold down in the tomb of the Orc Slayer. They put 2,000 gold towards the build. They've got 5,500 left to go, and they've only got 1 day of progress in the actual build time. So essentially, they've really just started. They found a contractor, and they've secured a contractor with the 2,000 gold, and they've secured stonemasons and various construction groups and guilds to come and do the work, but no real construction hasn't started just quite yet. And then the last countdown is one of the characters, Husqvarna, the barbarian. They activated one of Hallister's portals to go to one of the other levels, and unfortunately they weren't high enough level, but he still went through, got pushed back by the female spirit, and however, going through the door still activates a bit of rune magic from Hallister, and they lucked out and got a goblin butler who thoroughly enjoys following whatever Husqvarna wants him to do, and doesn't quite like the rest of the group, but it still works. So yeah, that's pretty much where they got Reginald from, or they renamed him Reginald, and they decided that he would be their major domo of their complex, of their manor house, but he needed to get taught on how to do that. So he's currently enrolled in a 1-year course in the city of Waterdeep to be a major domo. So that's what Reginald's learning right now. That costs 650 gold for a year's worth of training on that, and he literally just started, so they've got another 12 months to complete that. All of this is in-game time, not out-of-game time, and as you can see, we try and keep as close records as possible to facilitate the verisimilitude, the feeling of realism, by tracking these days as close as we can. So with that, this is Asa from Aloha Nerds saying aloha.